exactly,
on a daily basis.
Yeah. I mean, part of the issue, of course, was that from an IRA perspective, the RIC were seen as the information gatherers for the decisions of government against the IRA and against the concept of a new state being achieved. So from there, I think that photograph really says a lot about the character of the established force of the RIC.
It shows the two sides of the RIC. That's what it shows. Yeah. And the other thing is just when you look across at that building there, you can imagine in 1920 how imposing that building was.
Absolutely.
Like you see it now and you put it in perspective with the hotel and whatever. But in 1920 that would have been a major building in the town.
It was a real statement, landmark building.
Prior to that, the barracks was in Clonard. You know the end of High Street?
Yes.
There's a big house in on the right. End of High Street.
Right.
That was the barracks. Right. Before they moved down there.
Yeah. And when did they move down there? Do you know?
I'm not sure when they moved down there.
From what I see as well is the RIC were the kind of the Irish heritage and Irish people, so they were it was kind of like a good cop bad cop scenario as well. That's the feeling I get. So that's where they come out and would have.
Yeah, I mean, the RIC was seen as the post office, as they were all arms of the state, but okay, we didn't like the idea that we were being ruled from England, but there was nothing particularly seen as objectionable. If you got a job with them, you were laughing, you secured employment. And I mean, at that time, jobs weren't easy to get. I mean, that's equally reflected in people going off to the war.
Mouths to be fed.
They simply took the shillings to keep the people at home fed. So you got to look at history in that kind of context.
A lot of them seem to come from the country as well.
Yeah.
Where jobs would have been really scarce back then. Like Balbriggan would have thriving industries at the time, but down the country there'd be very little going. So when you get a job, it was of great value to the families.
On that point, my grandfather moved from Fitzpatrick to these temples as a kind of a manager.
Right.
He was out of a job, so he had to join the army.
Yeah.
Right. Simple as that.
Yeah.
No one work.
Yeah.
Phoned out overnight.
And that was the outcome the Black and Tans wanted at the time, was to put people out of jobs. And that's why they're going around burning the factories.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't totally agree with that.
No?
That was a mistake, I think, to burn these temples.
Yeah,
I understand that bit of it. They intended to burn a factory. And when they were choosing which one they burned, they made the error of actually burning an English one.
Yeah, I would have thought that the burning of the factories was a side effect of the cause.
Right.
They simply came in, lost the head, went into retaliation, and burnt it.
I've seen it. Let's wreck these guys' jobs. Let's take their jobs away.
I'm not sure that I've never seen it quite like that. I would have saw it just simply as being retaliation. And if you look at most of those kind of outrages, they were acts of retaliation to something that had happened in the.
So it appears to have been a lot of lawlessness amongst the Black and Tans, and I'd say there's no direct plan on what to do in Balbriggan that day. They came in to do damage, but I'd say they didn't actually plan out to burn this.
It was very late at night.
It was running amok.
Well, a lot of drinking involved. There's a lot of alcohol involved as well on the night,
But then we mentioned Mr. Jack Straw, who seemed to give them some leadership and some direction. Is that? Do you want to talk about Mr. Straw now, or this is where he lived? I believe this end of the town, isn't it?
Well, he lived in Key Street.
Key Street, okay.
Yeah,
down around the corner.
Yeah, and he lived with Donnelly.
Donnelly, no relation.
No
relation. I remember all right.
They were fishmongers, and they would have had some element of boarding house. That's what it seems to be, and Jack Straw turned up in the spring of 20 and lived with his aunt and her husband, his uncle. But the bloodline is through the Mrs. Donnelly. And he was a strange character. He dressed partly in military gear. He had khaki trousers, hoodies, and an army jacket and a ordinary overcoat. It's how the uncle remembered him leaving the house the last time he saw him.
Right.
So
a self-imposed kind of.
Yeah, he was an ex-army guy who
Still thought he was in the army.
Yeah, and he interacted with he identified with the RIC Black and Tans. He identified with those in uniform. Now, was he a fellow who was coming back who was shell-shocked from the army, or was he
put here
a spy creating the character of a shell-shocked guy? You know, I mean,
yes.
you look at it. You know, in history, you have to look at the other possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Showing great sympathy towards him.
Well,
you're giving him an inch.
I think that if you look at the long term of the thing, if you tell the story out fully, I'm raising the question, but when you look at the story fully, and when Dan Brophy picked them up, Straw was carrying 2 loaded revolvers. So I would think that more than likely dismisses the benign interpretation.
Yes.
But
it's important to speak.
But it is important
to lay out both because over time one overtakes the other.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that I think that to understand it fully, and I think that to just understand history, you have to look and explore the possibilities.
Just going back to what Hal was saying about Jack Straw there, there's something else you must remember here as well. A lot of the Black and Tans, probably Jack Straw and the Black and Tans, a lot of them were traumatised coming back from a war, you know.
Right.
And we don't know what sort of shape they were in, what sort of mental shape they were in, you know? And we're just bundled together because they could earn a few bob by taking on a job in Ireland and they were slammed over. But they wouldn't have been mentally very good at that stage from the trauma of World War.
And would you have got a kind of types of sympathisers as well that would have rubbed up to the Black and Tans, you know what I mean? And you know, people that lick up to authority as such.
I don't think that would have happened after the first 4 or 5 weeks of the Black and Tans being in Ireland. I mean, they made a reputation for themselves very quickly.
They didn't make any friends.
Yeah, I mean, the point that Eugene's making is absolutely right. Here are guys who've been through a war.
Some were in prison and taken out of prison.
Yeah, but you take the guys that were coming from war. They were in really bad war situations. You know, I mean, war is never pleasant.
Absolutely,
The end of the First World War wasn't, the whole thing was horrendous. They arrive back, and there's no employment for them. They're on the breadline. And they're being treated as scum. And suddenly they get the opportunity to join this group, come in to put manners on Ireland. They're paid good money. They've got board and lodgings, decent food, cash in their hand. What have they got to do in their spare time? They drank. I mean, they drank in every pub here in the town. They drank in Balscadden. They drank at the 2 pubs up at Dormanstown. So it
wouldn't have been a pleasant experience for the locals then in the pubs.
Well, the publicans must have been making a fortune.
Yeah,
but I mean, it was all about drinking and carousing. In turn, we talked about the Flapper Day. You know, they were the boys with cash. Out spending money at the race meeting. You know,
the whole aspect of Black and Tans, it would have been sold to them in England as a very easy mission coming over to Ireland and controlling the Irish. So they'd have been sold that on the pretense that the RSC has more or less things under control. You just need to go in and back them up and reinstate the law as they see it.
Yeah.
But I think they came here, they made enemies very quickly, and so the popularity was nil at that stage, right? And they found themselves in a very awkward position, let's say.
Okay. We'll move on down to Clonard Street or Sinn Féin Alley.
Sinn Féin people had a meeting or whatever.
There was a celebration, celebration up there over the conscription.
No, it was actually the hunger strike. The
hunger strikers were getting out of jail.
The hunger strikers were released.
Yes,
and
right.
Gaynor organised a parade up to Clonard Hill. And some of the guns which had been seized from private houses were buried in shafts at Clonard Hill, just as an aside. And when they were up on the hill, Finnerty, who was the local sergeant, had 3 RIC officers with him. and word got to Gaynor that Finnerty intended to take the tricolour before the tricolour got back into the town. And at the top of the street here, the sergeant made a rush at the standard bearer, and Gaynor dropped him. Is actually the phrase
That's
he
the
used.
phrase you dropped him. I read that in a statement.
Dropped him. And the three RIC guys didn't hang around to enforce law and order. They demonstrated how good they were at running, and they made it for the barracks. And
but even when you say that now, like that draws the question. There was no retaliation for that. So
he was an RIC officer.
Right. And what was Burke?
In the traditional sense.
Right, okay.
Burke equally was an RIC officer, but he actually was encamped with the Tans in Gormanstown. He was providing presumably training in terms of policing. So there was an affinity between the Tans and, so on.
I picked up somewhere along the line now as well, because I did wonder now why that didn't cause as much issue that Finnerty being shot.
Finnerty was here. It must have been stationed at the barracks probably.
Yeah.
But one of his favourite pastimes was at dinner hour. No lunchtime then. At dinner hour, I believe. The fellow had put tricolour up on the corn mill, on the roof of the corn mill. And Finnerty used to come up. You know where the garage is up there, Expo garage, whatever it is now. Well, that was they were cattle pens. There was a cattle mark up there, but there was a wall along the road. And he used to go up there and lie on the wall with the rifle and try to shoot down the tricolour.
There would have been constant friction going on, and that's the point. Like, I realised that Balbriggan wasn't necessarily a hotbed of nationalism or so on, but when the Black Hands came, and that's what happened, and that's what happened all over the country. It got people back to it.
One of the interesting points that you just reminded me was the Black and Tans, when they were leaving Gormanstown, didn't have to count out their ammunition or count it back. So they could do anything they felt like.
Right.
Nobody.
They had a free hand.
They had a free hand. You didn't account for.
You had to account for every round.
Yeah. And
would they have had to give any testimony afterwards? Sorry? Would they have been interviewed and had to give any testimony of their actions?
We haven't found any testimony to that effect. Paddy Finnegan, who is one of our guys who does a lot of research for us, has turned out the papers in terms of Gibbons and Lawless's, their inquiries that followed them and so on.
Right.
Then but that's the nearest we've come to thing. I mean, the judgment call and the inquiries. There was no post-mortems. There was no. Sorry. What's the
cut.
What's the
autopsy? Oh no, we start again.
It's